All right, welcome. We are back doing our quarterly What's Happening in Minnesota Real Estate Show. We got Michelle waving, Michaela waving and smiling, and then myself, Chuck Carstensen team, Remax Results. And again, we do this particular show that I post online on the YouTube, on the Real Life Impact Podcast page about once a quarter. Last one we did was March 20th. It is June 27th. So we had to get this done before the end of the month. Here we are.
March, really?
Yep, every quarter, Michelle. That was
I know, but I feel like we did it in between there. Wow, that's crazy stuff. Time just flew right by.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I remember we used to
on this, you guys can comment with your questions if you're watching the live video. We did not make any warning that we're doing this. It was like, hey, does this work? You know how we go all over. I had a walkthrough in Pillager, a closing in Baxter. Now I'm going to an appointment in Maple Grove, and I stopped at our St. Cloud office. That's where I am now, doing the live video. So making the rounds today, driving the miles, burning the gas.
What you do best.
Of course you do.
That's what we all do. Michelle's been to Palisade already this week, which is farther than I went.
Yeah, we have. We go everywhere.
Michaela, have you been anywhere this week?
Not any further than you guys, no.
Okay.
Just around this area more.
Staying near home. All right, sounds good. So typically what we do on the show is give you an update of what's happening in the Minnesota real estate market. We're in the spring market. Also, what I wanted to talk about a little bit is financing options that we're aware of that maybe people don't think of, or even if they're common, but people don't think of. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We're going to do like a 30 total minutes of showtime. And then also some of the sellers or buyers, concerns, occurrences that are coming up that we ran into that maybe are avoidable or something just to be aware of that would be helpful for everybody just trying to learn a little bit about the real estate process. Because more and more we are finding almost every time, not every time, very often during the week when people, for example, reach out to us on Zillow, for example, and they're buyers, they have no idea what they're doing. Like they think buying real estate's way different than it really is. And we're not going to share some of those stories, but even that we might think, since I've been doing this forever, that people know how to buy real estate. A lot of people don't. So this could be informational for many people, and definitely share our information. If you are listening to recording or watching or worked with us before in the past, we'd love to help your people, friends, family, coworkers.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, Michelle, well, let's get your update. What do you think? How is the real estate market going? What do you think is happening?
I think that it's just kind of on a steady pace. I think there is oftentimes an election year, people wait to see what happens after the election. Some people get scared that I know 4 years ago, so it's 2020, that was right before COVID, right? People were scared that they might have to sell or buy depending on what happens to the election. And then the election happened. And then during that time before they took office, people were scattering, doing things. So it's interesting why people think the election really changes anything. COVID changed stuff, but the election doesn't necessarily change things too much. Like we might see some lower rates, which we were going to see no matter who gets in office anyways. We're going to see them come down some. But I don't think it makes a difference otherwise that way. But people do say, like, waiting to see what the election happens. That's one thing. But there's a lot of good programs out right now, and I know we're going to talk about that. And one is a first-generation home buyer program. So if you've never owned a home in your life, you should definitely reach out to us and ask us about that. If you maybe would qualify for the first-generation program, you can get up to somewhat over $50,000 in grants. So you're basically doing like a 20% down conventional loan, and some of it does not have to be paid back if you live there a number of years. So that's definitely one of the programs out there. It's not ran out yet. I imagine it will run out eventually. Well, it will. It's still there currently today. So that's one of the programs out there that
You definitely should look into that, or you could just keep living in a van down by the river, whatever works best.
Or keep living in your apartment. I mean, the thing is like part of it is some of it doesn't have to be paid back after 10 years. Some of it doesn't have to be paid back after 20 years. But I mean, oftentimes people live in their house at least 10 years. Even if you didn't, more often than not, the house will go up in value enough to cover that equity. And then you might be paying it back, but you're getting equity in your house. So it just depends. But you definitely want to look into it because, I mean, I've been in the business nearly 10 years now. And I would say at least over half my buyers are still in their house. So I mean, it's a good chance you're going to be there at least 10 years, especially if you hadn't owned a home before. So that's a good program to contact us, and we can get you in touch with lenders that know what they're doing with that program. I have close buyers already this year with that program. And it's kind of crazy because you go from not being able to buy a house barely to having like zero money down to being like a 20% down conventional buyer that beats everybody else out. So it's interesting. It's a good program.
Michaela, your thoughts on the market?
Off of that too, like in addition to that, for the first generation program, if your parents haven't owned a home, they say within the last 3 years, so either side parents haven't owned a home, you could also qualify for that program as well. So been helping a buyer through that, actually 2 buyers through that right now that are trying to work through the process.
And Michaela left us. She disappeared from the face of the stream video. So, all right. Well, she was basically, she got enough of the summary. That is the first generation home buyer is, somebody whose parents hadn't owned the home in 3 years is how they say it works. Okay.
Or if you don't know your parents anymore.
Or if you don't know your parents. So they
here.
could possibly own a home, but you don't know because you don't know them.
Or they're no longer here. They don't live. They're not alive. They didn't own a home in the last 3 years. Then you definitely probably qualify.
So it seems like a lot of flexibility. Mm-hmm. We'll let Michaela back in when she gets back in here. For those people listening, they have no idea what's going on. We do this on a live stream. Anything can happen. People could, storm into my conference room and like yell at me, and I'd be live on video. But nobody's ever done that. So
you do have a TV on behind you. I have some lights that aren't on. So Michaela's just funking off.
No, it's my phone. So
we summed up the program for you, Michaela. What else do you think is happening in the real estate market?
Well, even with that too, there's a lot of money accessible out there for those programs. So yes, you have to stay in your home for a while, like you were saying. So like a couple of the buyers I'm working with, if it is a first time home purchase, maybe you have paid a small amount in rent before, or you're like living with your parents for a while in between kind of places where you're going to be. So just getting comfortable with the payments as well. But knowing that it can make your payments low enough where you'd be really surprised like of the opportunity out there for you, and that it actually might be a little bit easier to own a home than you may think it is, at least for a mortgage payment. So there's that as well. I'd say, and I've kind of been seeing this shift over the last few months, and I know we talk about it too, but even going into a home, buyers are a little bit more picky. I don't know if picky is the right word, but seeing a trend of like looking for it to be almost like turnkey. So things are like looking nice in there. They don't have to do a lot of work to it. I mean, there are some buyers out there that still don't mind doing work, but really are wanting it to be ready for them so they can move in and not have to worry about things. I've been seeing that happen too, as well. So, which, it's like, it just makes a little bit of a pickier buyer's side of things in the transaction, in my opinion. So.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, so that's one of the programs. One thing, so while we're on the financing lines and what's happening in Minnesota real estate, going back to the financing part. So one thing I want people to remember, so a lot of people are staying in their homes, right? Maybe they have low interest rates. Maybe they're waiting on the election, like Michelle said. But things cost money and people do have equity in their homes. And I'm not like a big, like recommend get a HELOC or a HE loan for equity on your house. If you've owned it for a while, you could though. So one thing I'm mentioning, there are, people that we do a lot of vacant land sales. There's people want to do vacant land. There's people want to use their equity and maybe get a second home or whatever. So or it might be just to add on their house, make it better, do something with their yard. There are home equity loans that don't affect your current interest rate that you can pull out on your home to do your project, get your land, get your camping land, get your recreational land, get your recreational vehicle. So that's another thing people might that are sitting put, not doing anything, but want to do something with their life to have fun, to make it better. Like you can go with a HELOC loan and not affect your low interest rate, and you just have a chance to draw money on your home. You don't necessarily need to draw the money right away. It could be like, well, I want to get this set up and then I'll draw the money in a year or whatever. So that's another financing option. I was just on a webinar a little bit ago on that. I was like, that's a good reminder. Like somebody like me, right now, I'm not looking to do a HELOC on my home, but I have equity. And it's like, well, if I wanted to do this other thing or do something with, my house renovations, and if I was somebody who then did want to do that, but didn't have all the money, it's like, well, I could use the equity from my house to renovate the house. So that is something I think we're going to see a lot. People are doing that are staying put, but eventually you need to update or maintain your house. And that's something to keep in mind. And the other thing I want to mention, we obviously refer our lenders that people know that have worked for a while. I'm now licensed to do mortgages. So one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is I'm through Better Mortgage, and we can help you with that. And one of the reasons I went through this, to get better at understanding the mortgage process, even though I've been doing this a while, but also a lot of past customers staying in the house have equity. And you could call your bank, but actually Better Mortgage has probably the easiest, slickest process of all for getting home equity line of credits, and probably have the most competitive rate. They basically try to beat the rate. Basically, by the time your bank gets back to you, we could have you in the best rate and have the home equity. So I'm doing a little plug on my mortgage license.
Nice.
No, it's nice.
It's good that you have that option, and then you see another side of real estate. It's always good to know other sides of real estate that we don't know, although they'll come up every day. But yeah, it's good that you joined with a program that has low interest rates, because as we always tell people, we give people tons of options. Pick whatever lender you want, but the rates and the closing costs are different depending on what you go with. Not everybody is the same, no matter what you do. So insurance, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's good information, because you might ask off the thing of like, why would I HELOC to buy 5 acres of land to put my camper on? Well, because if you go to the bank, the rate might be more, and at least you're going against equity in your house, which you already have. So you're not just taking a loan on nothing.
And also, if you need to take out a second loan, you might need a down payment, where your HELOC to buy your land is just like, here's the money. And it's the same thing anyway. You're still getting a loan. And then there's some flexibility, not saying you want to do it interest only, but you could do it interest only. And maybe you're like, well, I'm going to buy this land, camp on it now, retire in 4 years, build a house there. You sell this house, pay off the loans on it, and you already have some extra investments to build your house, and it just works smoothly. And that's a lot of people, more than you think.
It is, because it's not always easy to get a land loan without money down. So we do help a lot of people do that. And like, people buying land? Yes. And you can go online and be like, who's the best land lender? And you'll get like the white-tailed deer hunting properties people, but maybe not buying deer hunting property. Chuck and I and Michaela and AJ help tons of people every year buy land all over the state, literally all over the state, and all kinds: farmland, hunting land, buildable land, pasture land, throw your cows out there. I mean, tons of land. We know a lot about it. Grew up on the farm. Even little Michaela did. And we do know a lot about helping with your land. So if you're listening, you're like, oh, we need a realtor in Minnesota that helps us buy land. Do we just call the listing agent? No, unless we are the listing agent, then you can call us. Otherwise, you should call us to buy land. There's my plug.
Yes, do it. All right. And I got a couple of people thinking about doing land purchases today. I've been messaging them a little bit, so might have a couple more land sales. Hopefully we're working on here. So any other financing options you guys want to bring up that people might not think of or know of?
You could, there's also programs out there too for low income single moms as well, that somebody might not know about if they are looking to purchase in the future that they could be applicable for on top of first generation home buying as well.
Single parents. Yep.
Single parents, yeah, not specifically single mom, but single parents, low income. So,
yep. And people forget, like, if you want to buy a property outside of metro areas, there's USDA financing, which is 0% down. We've helped a lot of veterans. I mean, we help veterans every year, but it seems like more this year. That's the rates, because if you're a veterans, the rates for VA loans are actually lower than pretty much anything else. So a lot of people like to take advantage of their veteran status. 0% down on those. So some people are like, what is the difference? And there's FHA and there's conventional, and there's also rehab loans. If you find a house that's not going to be regular financing, you can do a rehab loan. There's a lot of things out there that people don't really think about. There's like, I'm going to buy a house. What do? I click online and then it just pops up and I buy the house. That's not exactly how it works, but that's why you have people that know what they're doing to help you. And we're not saying you can't use an internet lender. That's not what we're saying, but it's a good idea to have somebody that you could technically go to and talk to in person if you are able to do that. So.
Yep. So, and I think in general nowadays, with everything being online, as long as you get a pay stubs and get your taxes and they're sent to you by email and that kind of stuff, it's pretty easy to upload your stuff and find out if you're approved. And one more thing with my Better Mortgage, and we refer our other lenders like we always did, but I've got people also going to my link. They can do a soft credit pull. It takes like 3 minutes just to give you a baseline of where you're at. It's a pre-qualification, but then you're not getting your credit pulled. So that's always a slight benefit if you're just like, well, I'm not sure when I'm going to do something, but I want to see where I might land at financially and what I could afford now. Obviously, like Michelle said, the rates could be lower in a year and then you can afford more next year. That could happen. And that's
the other thing with financing. So for like people that, I'm not going to say what every company does, and you can tell us what Better Mortgage does, but if you bought now and you're like, what if the rates go down a year? Why didn't I wait a year? Usually for free or a smaller amount than a regular loan, you can refinance down as long as the rate goes down 1%. Am I wrong? I think I'm
correct. Yeah, you can easily refinance for low cost and obviously great savings on the payment. And that is totally fine. I think, you had experience with like re-amortizing your loan. I don't think that was even a refi, but maybe that didn't change the rate, but you've done that before. There's a lot of things you can do. And so that's probably good on the financing part. One of the things that's happening in Minnesota real estate is it's a spring market, still active. There's still the most popular, most competitively priced, aggressively priced homes, still getting multiple offers, still getting several showings. But I also think there's some homes, some properties, probably some property owners, maybe it's a real estate agent. We've talked about this before, pricing high. I'm seeing more price drops, especially in the higher price type of properties that I think people thought they could keep seeing 10% appreciation. And it's like, no, you can't. No, not 10% appreciation. I've seen a lot of price drops. So one thing I am seeing is many more price drops. What else are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's at the time of the year kind of was like last year at the beginning of the year where we just see a lot more realtors sending us emails of the properties they have because they're not selling. And that's what you're saying. That's why you're getting price drops. And we could talk about that when we started doing this 4 years ago. It's like some people think their house is worth more than it is, and it's not. And then you drop the price. And the only bad thing really, if there's an issue with pricing it way too high, is you actually end up getting less than you should get. And if you just priced it where it kind of should be, then people don't think there's something wrong with it. Otherwise, they think something's wrong with it, it's falling off the foundation, and they want a really good deal. So when we're helping people list properties, no matter what it is, I mean, even land, if you overprice it, like it'll sit there and never get a showing ever. But you can't think your house. I mean, you can go on Zillow and it kind of tells you what your house is worth. I mean, for the most part, it might be 50,000 off, but 50,000 off sometimes isn't even that far off. But like, you can't think your house is worth more than it is, or don't even try to sell it. There's no point. unless you're willing to go down. But yeah, you're just hurting yourself when you overprice properties. So Chuck's saying to see a lot of price drops is, which we've seen this year too, even on properties we've listed, when people are thinking their house is worth more than it is, they end up taking less than they probably would have if they just priced it right to begin with. So,
Mhm.
uh-huh.
I would say even on top of that too, like the buyers that I help, and I'm sure you guys can relate, if they do see a house that is price dropped, their first reaction or first question is like, what's up with that house? What's going on? Like, what they want to know, what's wrong with it or what's going on with it, like what's up with it. That's the
Mhm.
first question that I get, because it won't, sometimes their search is only set up to a certain max, so when it drops into that price range, it's like, oh, this one's been on for X amount of days, like what's going on with it? Is there something wrong with it? Is it worth seeing? Those are the first things. That's the first what I get from everybody, really. Is that I would say too, on the opposite side of things, is understanding that agents or sellers, even if they price it where it's worth, if it's they price it where it's worth, it's more likely to, I mean, we've been seeing it's more likely to get bid up. So then as a buyer, having to be under like the understanding that we might have to offer X amount over, even on the house, even if the house is just listed at this price, we walk in there, we're like, okay, it's had a ton of showings. This is what we, kind of think. Where are you guys comfortable going? It's likely going to get bid up anyways. So buyers have to almost be more comfortable with knowing that if a house is listed for 270, it could be selling for 280 or 285. And that's not unlikely. So coming into the market, knowing that that's quite a possibility, that's something that's been happening. So.
Mhm. Yeah. When people ask us, like, do you still see bidding wars?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If it's priced how it should be and it's in the market where people want to buy, I mean, there's still a lack. When we're saying there's price drops, there's still a lack of inventory in the price ranges of what a loft and people can actually buy.
Yeah, like that was the other thing about the market I was going to mention. It's still, we probably mentioned this last time too. It's still in the smaller town areas that, like, obviously Michaela goes out to a lot, and I do, and AJ. The rural areas for the first time home buyer, there's like always one or two houses at most. It's like that's not enough houses to have available. So yeah, those get bid up almost for sure, unless somebody prices them high, and then still somebody will eventually offer, but you probably do better with the pricing aggressively. But there's barely any homes to buy for them. The ones that I think are dropping when there's enough homes in the general area and the general genre of homes, or they simply just overpriced it, and then you're seeing price drops. Like there are, I feel a lot of lake homes are now overpriced and they're dropping. Like people thought that they're going to go up, up, and up. And now some of them still, 10 people love them, 5 people offer, and they get bid up, and partially could be priced aggressively. But some of them are like, people just think they got, sitting on $500,000. It's like, it's probably 400,000, which 500 to 400, it's different. So they list at 489 and it's drop, drop, drop. So, and that's just a general example. Or somebody got a glorious price that had something similar, and that similar listing got 540. So they think theirs is 550 and it's really 475. So we're seeing that. I think I'd say in lake homes, a little bit on higher price acreage homes where it's not necessarily that the price is bad for the cost of replacement. It's just only so many people can buy a $700,000 home. So boy, probably might have to plan on getting 650, 625 on it. And it's a beautiful house, large acreage. And then you're like, so somebody gets 325 for their little house in town, and I get all this land, all this house, my big outbuilding, and I get 625. Yep, not as many people qualify. It's supply and demand. Big demand in 300 buyer range, low supply. Low demand, lower demand, and higher price range, and maybe lower supply too. But the demand and supply drive the economy on the different areas, different segments. Got to remember that. That's always what's happening in real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends what areas it's into. And I see, and people ask me like about farmland, because we do have people buy and sell farmland as well. And man, farmland's not going down. I can tell you that right now. Somebody's gonna buy it and farm it because I mean, I think that's because like things are building out where there isn't, there isn't as much farmland available as there used to be. I mean, we used to drive into Maple Grove from Todd County, and where Maple Grove is like a big giant area, tons of houses and restaurants and shopping things. It used to be an acreage cornfield. So you got to go farther out to get farmland. Farmland's been more expensive. Actually, hunting land is going up in price as well. Like for good hunting land, I'm not saying you got to get through like 3 easements to get to hunting land, but like good solid hunting land is good price too. So if you're ever thinking of like, wow, I have all this land and what am I going to do? I don't want to leave it to my kids. I kind of want my money now. I mean, it's a good time to sell. Not saying that in 5 years you wouldn't get way more, but maybe you won't live 5 years. Not trying to be.
Yeah, and we talked about home equity line of credit. If you're just sitting on property and like would like to have money and you don't really use it and you're like, well, maybe they'll go up more, but yeah, you're older. Why not just sell the property now and go have some fun or do some stuff with the money and have some money left for your family? It's, do whatever makes sense. But some of your property is your home, your equity that you don't use, you could use it and just enjoy something else a little bit more. So yeah, I think that's a lot of the listings I get is that. And some of the other listings I get are literally people that, moving out to assisted living, health issues, or passed away. So I'm getting a lot of those listings, and that's just what's happening in the market. Some of the properties that are coming on, people aged out of them, and some of those show well, and some of them need some work too. It just depends on, who kept them up and so on. So we're seeing that, and that kind of segues into what seller challenges, what buyer challenges are you seeing? And I think a seller challenge is if the home does need some work, some maintenance, not that many buyers want to or financially can handle doing some of the work. So you end up just naturally, even if on paper it's a certain price, and even if we deduct what we think it costs to do it, you still, as a seller on those properties that need work, naturally will normally get less than you could if it was in good shape, obviously. So that's something I'm seeing more of because there are a decent amount of those kind of properties out there. What other buyer, seller concerns, challenges are you seeing? Even if we talked about them before, but are you seeing a lot of now?
I would say even on the seller's side of things, so like working with a buyer, you don't necessarily like I don't know say it's like a challenge, but it's almost sometimes more of a positive. You don't necessarily have to be the highest bidder. Sellers are really looking at the offer as a whole and not just the numbers, but is it clean? Is it well kept? Like, is it presented well? As far as like home inspections, contingency with home inspections, like we're still seeing home inspections now. I know for a while that we weren't, but like, is the earnest money solid? We usually say like at least 1%. And then are they asking for a bunch of things, or are they okay with it as is? So like you don't have to be the highest bidder to get a house. So I wouldn't be fearful of being in the buying situation and having multiple offers. You might have to put in a couple different offers, but you're not necessarily having to be the highest bidder either if you can bring other things to the table as well. And the sellers actually do notice that and take that to account too. They don't always want the highest amount. So
yeah, I've seen a couple times this year.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about how the offers present it, how clean it's written, and who the agents are. Sometimes really helps.
Yeah, and you can actually, as a realtor, we try to, obviously we've been around and do a lot of business and have good rapport with agents. That does help. So if you're like, hey, who should I work with? It is an advantage to work with a team that way that's been around and well-known and works in a wide area. But also just in general, the conversations we have with sellers and buyers, I think one of the things we do well and probably more effectively than most teams is we're more a case-by-case, situation-by-situation playbook. We run the play for that specific seller or buyer, where most people, here's our playbook, here's how we do it for every seller, here's how we do it for every buyer, here's where we handle multiple offers all the time, and this is what you should do, and that's all they present. We like, okay, what's going to make sense for this person, what's going to make sense in this situation. And I don't see that a lot. I think that's a slight advantage of working with us in many situations. Not that everything goes perfectly, not saying, we're the greatest ever. I'm just saying, like, these are things people don't think about, don't know about, but our playbook is very deep compared to most people, and that's very helpful for sellers and buyers when they have challenges. So there's many things that come up as a challenge. We've talked about many before. Some can be very simple. Like, in fact, I'll share from a few days ago to closing, and everything went smooth. People did use an online lender, smooth, clear to close like a month in advance. So we're just waiting to close. And then sure enough, on the day of closing, the lender's wire, like, it was like in nowhere land. So it didn't fund. The seller came to get his funds and it didn't fund. And the next day they had to like track it down and it funded the next day. But of course, most people would be totally freaking out. It worked out better that the seller and buyer kind of already got along. They met each other and like we're almost friends, even that they never knew each other before the transaction. So that helped. But also I was just there. I went to the closing, was there to explain that, like, hey, this has happened. Here's what's going to happen tomorrow. It'll work out. And they were better off at that. If somebody would have freaked, and the closer didn't do a great job of how she explained it. Like, she basically, if I wasn't there in that case for that closing, she would have freaked everybody out and they'd been like all pissed off. So like weird things like that can happen. And, it's just, you got to know what to do. And at least I knew what to do in that case, but there's all kind of little strange things that happen. I know I wanted to be done in half an hour and almost done, but is there another example of strange things or buyer seller concerns that one of you want to share before we wrap up?
I mean, there's different. It just happens so many different ways all the time. It's just having experience on your side. And we're not saying like Michaela has 25 years of experience because she's only 23 years old, but that's why a lot of things as a team, like if you go with somebody that's on a team that even if they just started to have like the Chucks and Michelles of the world to help them. And I mean, Michaela helps us sometimes too and comes up with great ideas because she's young and like, why don't you guys do it this way? But what I'm saying is like a lot of things have happened this year that happened other years too. I mean, we closing a month late and I had a VA buy that closed a month late and the seller stuck with us because the agent knew that we did a lot of business and we weren't just like, even with an online lender, like it's experience does help that you can trust people to work with. And that's what I say. Like, I mean, I could say that all day long, but when I have agents that I see on the other side, whether it's the buyer or seller, and they've sold one house, but they're not on a team and I'm closing the deal the whole time, it's like I'm doing double duty and I don't care because it's me representing my clients and make sure I'm getting there. But yeah, you want somebody to know what they're doing or have a team behind them that knows what they're doing for sure. That's a big part of this market, and it will be a big part as you continue to move forward in everything that happens in real estate. You want people with experience, or at least somebody on their team has experience. So
that's helped me quite a few times now. So being on a team and having you both, your experience and the other agent on the other side, knowing that like it's true, like it does really make a difference. And we've seen that, we've been told that, we've heard that, and things work out almost really, they work out more in our favor because of it. Even if they see like my name on the other side of the transaction, because obviously I haven't been in it for 20 plus years or 10 plus years. So knowing that this is the team that I'm a part of, they feel more comfortable on the other side of the transaction.
Chuck and I try not to make people mad.
Yeah.
Like what's that one meme? It was like a real estate meme.
And they're not married.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Some agents just realized after 10 years that we weren't married, that we were brothers. It was like a meme about how stressed out like a real estate agent can be. And we are maybe stressed out behind like in this office, like throwing things. No, I'm not throwing things, but what I'm saying is Chuck and I pride ourselves in teaching Michaela along the last 3-4 years. Like if the agent's mean to you, you don't have to be mean back because you're going to see him again someday.
Yep.
Let them be mean. You're probably going to work with them again and they'll be like, oh, they didn't yell back at me. So maybe I'll just take their offer. So there's a bunch of people out there that aren't very nice that are probably working on your side. So me and Chuck and Michaela are nice people. So that helps.
Does help. All right. Well, sounds good. Thanks for doing this. We probably won't do the What's Happening in Minnesota Real Estate show till September because I do my math on the month, that's the next thing I do. But I also do, a couple times a week, I'm posting my little mini podcast. So it's not like this podcast goes vacant. It just, we just don't do this variety of the show for a while. All right. Thanks for joining Michelle and Michaela. And we're signing off. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.